All right, here I am. So I'm hoping that you guys can see me. So right now I cannot see what you're saying. I have no idea. So of course this is throwing me off. And the reason why I decided to use my back-facing camera is simply because when you hold things up, I figured out the connection. When you hold up something that has writing on it, like this wonderful book that I might talk about a little bit, because it connects to what we're talking about today when it comes to gauge swatches. So I'm going to jump in now and I'm going to just start talking about it, and I'm hoping that as we move along I'll be able to actually figure out how to monitor what's happening here on my tablet. I probably should have had my computer next to me. But anyway, next time we'll figure that out. So what are we talking about today? I'm going to jump right into it. So today we're talking about gauge swatches, and you know, some of us have a real love affair with the gauge swatch and sitting with our needles for hours on end, and then there are those of us that really do hate. We hate the process. You know, we really despise you know, going through the swatching process, because we just want to hurry up and get on with the knitting. We want to make that sweater, right, or whatever it is that we're going to be making. So I want to turn all of you haters out there into lovers by the end of this video. So that's really what I'm hoping for. And so we're going to dig into that. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. And I'm going to ask you, you know, that question in just a few moments. But before I do, I'm going to introduce myself very quickly, and then ask you guys to introduce yourself. And I will hopefully be able to, you know, get on here and see where you guys are chiming in from, or I may have to pop around and look at the comments on the other side, and you'll have to just gaze at my beautiful lady right here that I'm standing next to. She's kind of quiet. She's not saying much right now, but she will say. I think she'll open up a little bit as we progress through this video. So. My name is Carrie Warner, and I'm the host of Power Pearls podcast. And every Friday, I jump on here at now 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's been my general time. I've changed it up over the last couple of weeks, but I've decided that this is really the prime time. This is a really good time to get on here. And so, yeah, so I ask you all kinds of questions. Sometimes it's a mixed bag of things. There might be questions or advice and tips that pertain to you know, your yarn crafting journey, your designing endeavors, that sort of thing. So those are the topics that we talk about here on this Friday edition. Really, it's an edition of the podcast. And so, if any of you are members of Power Pearls, this will be for you. The audio will be for you. Free for you in the members area of my Patreon page, and I'll share that information again at the end of this video. But basically, I'm going to be sharing the audio version, so you can take it on the go. Because I know for myself, I can't always sit and watch a video, but I can certainly listen. And listen, you know, I can listen at the gym. I can listen while I'm walking, while I'm driving, and by the way, it will be downloadable. So, you know, the videos, I think you can download these videos on Facebook, but they're really big. And so really, I think the audio version is definitely, it's a lot more convenient for you. So I'm gonna pop around, and I guess, you know, I'll see where you guys are viewing from, make sure everything is okay, because I can't get on here, unfortunately. So I might try another way. I went in through my Pages Manager, because, you know, this is a page, right? So you have the Pages Manager and then the regular Facebook page. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to get on here through my personal page. So I'm gonna pop around, and I'm gonna see what you guys are up to, and who's watching. Hey, there's Melanie. How are you? So Melanie says, I'm divided on gauge swatching. I know it's crucial for designing because we can fiddle with needle size and yarn weight to get the exact fabric drape that we want. And let's see if I can open that up on my new phone, because now I don't know if I can open that one up here. Let's see. Let's see, I'll have to get back to you on that one, Melanie, because I'm trying to open this up on my phone to view the question maybe that you have here. But I will answer that later. So Christina says, no patience, LOL. Hey, Megan, how are you? I know you love to swatch, Megan. And Megan happens to be quite a gifted designer. Megan does a lot for Creative Knitting Magazine. Let me see if I can get back in here and open up. I can't open up your comment, Melanie, for some odd reason. I don't understand that. That's so strange. Yeah, so, all right. So I think what I'll do is I'll turn things back around. Let me see if anyone else, where are you guys from? I don't see where you guys are quiet. Hey Jane, how are you? Nice to see you. Shirley from Yorktown. All right, so, Christina says she's a hater. She's a gauge swatch hater. Well, I'm sure that, you're gonna love it by the time we're done. So you guys, while I'm still here looking at your comments here. Sorry, I couldn't even think about what to say. How do I look on the other side? I mean, can you see me talking? Am I off, am I off to the side? I think I'm probably in a good spot. Is my head cut off? Stuff like that. It's kind of like the question that I have. So let me know real quick in the comments. And Megan says, oh yes, swatch it up, baby. That's awesome. So anyway, I am hoping that, I can't quite see what's happening on the Power Pearls page from my personal page, so I guess I'm just going to have to give it up. All right. Hi, okay, so I'm going to guess that everything looks okay because I can see the frame and it looks like we're on track. So I'm going to go back on to the other side and I'm just going to go through everything that I plan on chatting about today. And so for the next time, new idea, I'm going to make sure that if I'm going to use my back-facing camera, that I have my desktop computer, and you guys will know I'm just looking at the comments. It's not a big deal, right? That I'm maybe looking away to do that. So that will be the approach next time. All right, so here we go. Here's my question to you guys. Do you love making swatches or do you simply despise the process? Now I already asked you guys that. I said I was going to ask you that, but some of you already jumped in. So this is officially question time. So if anyone is just jumping in live right now, I want to know, do you love the process? Are you a lover of swatching or are you a hater? And, like Christina said earlier, it's like, you don't have the patience. But I want you to enjoy it because the process of swatching itself shouldn't be time. It's not time wasted. It's time that you can really enjoy and just soak it all in, so to speak. So I want you to be kind of thinking about what you're going to say in the comments. I'm going to go on over to the other side and take a look there, or just do a big switcheroo during the engagement part of this session, and then I'll just, I won't worry about my my back-facing camera anymore. So whatever way you answer, I want to know why you answered the way you did. Why do you hate it? Why do you love it? Because I think it would be really nice for everyone watching to know what your take is on the swatching process. So I'm here to say that, it should be personal. That's what I'm going to get into next. What if we could take these gauge swatches, right? So here's the run-of-the-mill stockinette and stitch gauge swatch, okay, that you're going to use when you're going to jump into making a sweater or most garments, because even if you have a certain stitch pattern, many times designers will use stockinette as sort of like the base, as the ground, because If you are using the needle size they suggest and the yarn they suggest, then you should get the same measurements, you know, the same gauge that they got. Now, this swatch is, well, it's about 4, you know, a 4-inch wide, probably a little bit longer. But I recommend that if you are going to do, well, I told myself I wasn't going to talk about gauge. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But it should be bigger. It should be bigger than 4x4. And I don't know why patterns say 4x4. They should be really, they should suggest larger swatches simply because your stitches per inch will vary the more you're knitting, especially if you're going to be working on a sweater. It depends on, you know, are you really, things like, are you sleepy? Did you have a glass of wine? You know, just your mood can affect the way you're knitting, honestly. I mean, we already know this, right? And also, the bigger it is, you can feel the drape more. So those were some of the tips. I'll get into those again for those of you who are designing or wanting to start designing. So this is a gauge swatch from, I don't know how long ago, but on every swatch I put information, 16 stitches by 24 rows equals 4 inches, blah, 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 right? Number 7 needle and what I used. And this was Encore worsted. It's probably a design for creative knitting, you know, maybe a blanket. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. But anyway, that's it. And so here it is, and I just tie it on. And that's if I really want to remember for the future, you know, for those designer swatches, those things you know, are really just this very kind of elementary approach, right? And then there are some other variations, which I'll just, you know, kind of get into, because of course, let's say you have an all-over design like this, you know, it's all lace, you know, you're doing a lace pattern, and that's it. So I think you should be, you know, especially with lace, you should be swatching with that pattern, you know, that's really an important thing. And then just some other variations here, you know, a couple of knit and purl swatches. Here's another one that I did with the information. So, and this is a discipline to keep that there, so you can remember. If you ever want to know again, if you see something in a magazine or a book, you want to make it again. It's just handy if you want to use that yarn again. But again, this is the message to anyone out there wanting to design. This is not necessarily something that you need to worry about doing. If you're making a sweater one time, you get your gauge, move on, you know, ship it. But this is an example of something I'm going to get into now. So here it might be, this was the body of a sweater, let's say, and I can kind of get a feel for the way it's draping. It's really not be great for a sweater. And then this is the edge. And I used 2 different yarns. And let's see what I said here. Let's hope I wrote that down. This is a yarn that's no longer available anymore. It's in Holiday Cascade is the body. Yes, I remember this yarn, and it's no longer around. And then the bottom is a bamboo yarn. And so I swatched these 2 together because I really just wanted to see how they would work, because I think that this holiday yarn was, it had some wool in it, or maybe, you know, wool acrylic blend with the bamboo. I wasn't sure. You know, I didn't know how that was going to drape, but I really liked it, and I ended up designing a sweater with this. And I made little notes about the pattern repeat and the picot edge, and that basically how many stitches equaled an inch on that, so I could remember. So that was an example, simple example of something, you know, where you're going to swatch areas of a pattern. So here's where we're going to have a little bit of fun. So dropping things. So here's a runner. Here's a little teeny weeny, like I make little babies. You guys know that if you've ever watched me on the Creative Knitting Facebook videos every Wednesday, the editor wants to know, I've talked about my babies, my baby swatches, my shawls and that sort of thing. That I make little babies, little baby hats. I got one of those too. Here's a baby, little baby. But this is a runner. This is a table runner. It's really quite wide and very, very long, and so I decided to swatch it. This is in Knit One Crochet 2. Second Time Cotton is the name. Yes, I remember. Isn't that crazy? And this was in a drop stitch book that I did years ago, and so I wanted to just kind of get a feel for at least the construction, because of course this in the end result was much different. The drape was different, the way it looked, because these triangle pieces, which they were created separately and then joined. So the overall feeling was different, but I really wanted to get an idea of how to construct. Here's another example. This was a hat that was in creative knitting. This is a designer's swatch. It's not mine, but I saw it in a box and I decided to bring it in to show you. But here it is. It's just like the side of a hat, and she did cables, and this was Joy Slayton who did this, and she's done many beautiful pieces. And this is another design of Joy's. It was a winter issue. Oh my gosh, I think it was winter 14. Oh my goodness. Probably have it down here in my basket of creative knitting issues. But what she did with this is she did some shaping on the side. This is the side of a cardigan, if you can see that. I don't know how much you can see because my camera. This is the lapel, and this right here is the pocket. Not full size. This is a tiny pocket. Look, a tiny little pocket, because it's an inset pocket, so she wanted to work on the construction. And also, this was what she sent me. This is what she sent the editor, right? So for an editor to see that amazing detail in someone's work, like, wow, she really knows how to make a pocket look beautiful. And this was also part of a slip stitch tutorial as well. So yeah, and that was really helpful. That's really helpful if you can do it, especially if you're going to work with magazines. And this is a design that I was working on years ago, and I wanted to add some embroidery, some simple embroidery here, and kind of play around with two color and like this ladder. It's not a drop stitch, it's just like a ladder stitch kind of thing. And this was going to be an empire waist, kind of here, empire, right? If you can kind of get the feeling. And then the rest, this would be really long and drapey, and then it would be form fitted up on the top, and kind of like a crisscross kind of kimono look. Anyway, and then here's for drop stitch. Now this is really important because, like, depending on your stitch pattern, your swatching could be totally different, like I said, than if you were just jump in. Like you thought, well, I don't want to spend too much time, or I don't want to do it really big. But if you were to take time, especially if you were going to do something like drop stitch and you're using a different yarn than what's recommended in the pattern, you should try some of the repeat, even though this is super simple, because when you drop stitches, so this was just one stitch, and look how it expands. So that changes everything. So drop stitch kind of goes, here's your swatch, and then it goes whoop, like that. So this is what happens, and it's good to know. And then this can become, I don't know, what could this become, I don't know. And then this was a piece that I did, I don't know how many years ago, for a pullover, and the center had ribbing right here. So it would be right here, the center, and then the rest of the piece would grow. And then just a couple more things that I wanted to kind of show you then I'm gonna kind of see what you guys are thinking, see how could you give these new life, because that's what I'm gonna get into next. Here's a little purse that I made. And so I decided that, so I had these swatches, if I could find, I thought I had it here in my little bag of tricks. Down here is a little bag of tricks. So yes, so I love miters, and so I was swatching for this, for a design, and it's actually right here as well. This was originally a baby blanket in creative knitting, and on this swatch I added embroidery, if you can see that there. Can you guys see that? And then I decided to take, so I was making like these long pieces, and then I decided to turn it into a purse, just like this. So what I did was I just sandwiched it in half, folded it in half, and then sewed the ends together, which was really easy with this. See, I could just sew them together along one end. Well, I'd have to make another, I would have had to make another triangle, so it was looking like a parallelogram, not going to get into the construction, but that's what I did. So I made it so that it would seam on a diagonal, so then when you sewed it, it would be perfectly round. And then I picked up stitches here, and then I just worked with a circular needle, and all I did was, you know, garter stitch, and then I lined it. Look at that, it's not done yet. It even has the needle in there. You see the needle inside? But I decided that I really wanted this to look pretty inside and out. So you can see that I was, that there's crochet. I decided to sew it, add some crochet stitches, and then do some really pretty back stitches there. And that was, you know, it's still in the works because I want this to be beautiful inside and out, because that's what happens when you put in zippers in a knitted item. Sometimes they lose something, I think. So you can see that there are artistic possibilities. You can just take your swatches, like I showed these square ones, and put them together, right? So you probably know what I'm leading up to, because the finale is not coming yet. And then here's another example of, you know, a swatch that has fringe, because I thought, well, you know, I really want to see what that's going to look like. So, you know, explore the possibilities, and, you know, don't worry about making a standard swatch. Make a bigger swatch, you know, for your gauge, but then start knitting other areas of the garment or whatever it is that you're doing. So like I said, show the fringe, you know, put fringe on it, or if there's any special shaping. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I hope that was helpful there. And I'm going to just break. I'm going to go over to the other side and see, you know, if you guys thought that was helpful, and also if you answered my question. You guys are supposed to answer my question, because I want to know not only if you're a lover or a hater, but if you, you know, like exactly why. Why is it? Why is it? So hey Rita, nice to see you. Good morning. Let's see. Melanie says, I seriously need to up my lining game. Let's see. So except for the sewing, Melanie says, the purse is cool except for the sewing. So I guess you mean you don't like to sew, or you don't like my sewing. I'm not sure which. Christina says, I guess I'm not very confident in what I'm doing, as well as really grasp the significance of the swatch. Although in my head, I know it is important. I'm just not confident. Yeah, so yes. And I think that's what it is too. I don't think that, you know, nothing's going to happen to your yarn. You know, you're knitting, right? So just pick up your needles and just see where things take you, because, you know, I feel like, you know, there are bigger things in life to be afraid of, right? So, so Christina, you say that you're not sure of the significance. Okay, so let's see how I can answer this. Well, so if you're going, because I said I wasn't going to kind of get into the gauge part of it, but I think obviously it's important because you're asking this. But if you're going to design, if you're going to make a sweater, let's not say design at this point. If you're going to make a sweater, then it's definitely important to know what your gauge is. I'm going to come back around. It's important to know what your gauge is, because, you know, you could start making this piece in a different yarn and your gauge could be totally off. It could be way too wide, or, you know, your armhole could be like really long or really narrow, which would be a problem. Because, you know, we all knit differently, and that's why. So a designer, someone who created this piece that you want to make, they knit differently. We all have different knitting styles. We might knit continental, we might knit English, whatever combination. You know, our tension, we may tension our yarn differently than someone else, and so you know, it's important that we know what the gauge is for our own way of knitting, if that makes sense. And also especially for garments, because your gauge could be wrong, you know, and then you're going to be crying later. Like I said, you know, all those different areas could be completely out of whack, and so that would be a shame. So that is the significance. That is really the importance of gauge swatching. Now, if you're going to make a scarf, not so important. If your scarf is a little bit smaller, a little bit narrower, a little bit longer, no big deal. No big deal at all. Same thing for a hat, sort of, but you do need to really get a feel for that for a hat, because if your gauge is off, your stitch gauge is off, your hat would end up being too small or way too big as far as how it fits your head. So that's where your gauge swatch comes into play with a hat, for example. So like I said, shawls, scarves, no big deal. But for garments, absolutely, absolutely. So let me see what else you guys are saying here. So Bridget says, the problem I have about getting gauge is that I order my, can't read that. Let's see. Janet says, I haven't done many full swatches yet, as I tend to make things that you don't have to be super picky. Sometimes I will knit up a few inches and then frog. Yeah, so, well, that's just it. So I think in a nutshell, the truth is that if you're going to make a garment, it really is important to work that gauge swatch. But like Jana was saying, simple little things, not a big deal at all. So don't kill yourself. But I just really wanted to bring this up, because if we do have those gauge swatches, what are we going to do with them? What can we do to make these artistic expressions instead of putting them in a little box and forgetting about them? Or if you throw them away, you have that gauge guilt, the gauge swatch disposal guilt. So Troy says, I hate making swatches, just want to jump into the project, but sometimes it's necessary, especially for garments. Right on, Troy. That's right. So, you guys, sorry I keep popping in and out of the frame. Oh my gosh, I feel bad about that. But yeah. So I know you guys are troopers and you totally understand. So we went into some of those ways that you can use your swatches. So I hope that you will try things out, make a little purse, or I don't know, just come up with some possibilities. Someone once made, depending on how big your swatch is, you can make an envelope slipper. Like where you fold it in half. It's got to be as long as your foot, okay? So like maybe like something like this. So they folded it over. Okay, I'm giving you a lesson right now. So they folded it over because this would work. This would work for a slipper, okay? This is awesome. So you sew this back. That's the heel, all right? You guys with me? I feel like I'm losing my voice because I don't have a microphone today, because you guys know, maybe you don't know, I just got a new iPhone 7 and I must have thrown away my jack. Jana, I threw it away, by the way, because yeah, that's right. I was talking about this last week, but I have a new one coming. Then you leave an opening for your ankle. So maybe you want to just, measure that. You can even you can measure your ankle or kind of wrap this around your foot and see how wide this needs to be. But, it has a nice stretch, right? Your gauge is, knitting has some nice bias in it. And then you sew the top here, and then you sew the other side. So really, essentially, all you're doing is you're just going to leave a little tiny opening. And then you actually have a slipper. Oh my goodness. So what else could you do? Oh my gosh. Embroidery, right? Make your slipper, put little lazy daisies, like little running stitches, make little flowers. The ideas are just going crazy in my head right now. Okay, so I need some water. I'm sorry, I have to do this. Because I feel like I'm yelling. I do apologize. Okay, so let's move on. Enough said about that. I want to see what you guys come up with. You can share that here in the video, in the comments on your desktop computer, because you can't do it here. You can't do it while it's live, but later on, I want to see what you come up with. I really would. Okay, so for you designers in the house, okay, anyone that's thinking about designing, you want to try to design, I'm going to give you 9 tips, okay? Now this is where the gauge part comes in. So I did talk about gauge a little bit. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here. So this is why it's important if you're going to design. Now, number 1, it's the blueprint. It's the blueprint for your design, whatever your design is. If it's a sweater, if it's a cowl, if it's a hat, if it's a pair of mittens, it doesn't matter. You definitely need a gauge swatch if you're going to create a design. It does become your blueprint. It's a beautiful thing, this little blueprint. Number two is it helps you to work out the tricky parts in a pattern. So like I showed you before, like I have all these swatches here. I didn't show them all to you because, there's a lot. I got a lot of stuff just hanging out here from past designs that I've created, like work out the parts that might be tricky. Here was a repeat. I wanted a panel to be in the center, and then I have stockinette on the edges with these loops. And this is sort of like, casting on, binding off. And just to figure out how to make this work in the pattern was tricky, even though that seems like it would be pretty simple. Especially with bind offs and casting on. So working out the tricky parts, okay, and then number three is, how does the fabric drape? Like I showed you earlier. I liked how this felt with the bamboo on the bottom, this bamboo fabric, because I knew it would be like nice and drapey. And you can see just from this small swatch how drapey this was. So you could feel it, and also you kind of do stuff with it, sleep with it, play, throw it around, put it in the washing machine. But you know what? This is like, I was going to get to, that's another tip, to block it. We'll do that in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so number four is, working out fully fashioned areas. You know what that means? Your armhole shaping. Armhole shaping maybe, fully fashioned, yeah. So armhole shaping, and maybe you have a raglan, right? A raglan sleeve. And so it's kind of part of your pattern, part of the, it's part of the front and the back. It's all one piece, right? You're working in the round. So you want to show what that looks like. Are there special accents, special design accents in that raglan shaping, perhaps? Things like that. You want to be able to work those things out in your design before you start working and before you put it down on paper. So if you're creating a garment and large areas, or stockinette or garter or whatever stitch pattern, work out all those shaping areas, all those landmark areas. Because all that in-between knitting that just is hours of just stockinette, 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 well, that's not an issue. That's the easy part. So working it all out ahead of time. So preparing is huge when it comes to setting out with that design. And the swatching process absolutely helps you with that. Number five is it gives you your stitches and your rows per inch. And so like I showed you on my swatch before, this is something that I put on every swatch, especially if designing is what I'm doing, that I have my stitch and my row gauge. And that stitch and row gauge should be like written next to you on your little graph paper if you're plotting things out on a schematic. This could be a whole other conversation, maybe something that the members can enjoy. I can do a workshop. You guys just, give me a shout out and let me know if this is something that you would want, because I'm happy to do that. It'll take a little time, but I'm happy to show you how to just plot out a very basic garment to design your very first garment. So stitches per inch, huge. Stitches and row gauge, huge for your swatch. And that's what you need to start. And then number six is, now typically you're going to create your gauge swatch, in a very elementary way with the stockinette stitch. But if you have an all over pattern, let's say, that is not stockinette, it's something else that, it's going to be important to know what that gauge is, then you should be swatching in that as well. So I always do both. So if I have like an all over cat's eye pattern stitch, for example, I'll swatch in that, and I'll also swatch in stockinette stitch, so that I can get my row gauge, my stitch and my row gauge for both. And it's very helpful if you can provide both of those gauges in your pattern, both the stockinette gauge and your pattern stitch gauge. And number seven, and this is a big one, and I don't see it enough, but if you're designing something in the round, and I love making garments in the round, that's my favorite way to work. If you're designing something that needs to be worked in the round, then make your swatch that way. Again, that's another thing here. Call out to you guys, do you know how to create an in the round gauge? If you don't, that's another tutorial that I'm happy to share. So let me know if that's something that you'd like to see. But there is a way to work a small swatch as if it's made in the round. And that doesn't mean working as if you're making a sock. You don't have to work in the round on double points. There's actually a way to work your typical you know, back and forth swatch as if it's simulating working in the round. So I'm happy to share that. But that's important because why? Because when you're working in the round, you're, let's say you're working stockinette, you're always knitting. You know this, right? You're not purling. When we purl, the gauge can change, especially for continental knitters. When I knit and then I purl on the wrong side, it's a little bit different. When I'm knitting in the round, when I'm knitting every row, it tends to be a little bit tighter, I think, for most continental knitters. So that's just a really important thing to remember. And then number 8 is everything you need is here. Everything on this swatch. Everything. Again, just kind of reiterating this blueprint. Everything you need is on this tiny little piece of fabric that you've created. And then don't forget, and then number 9 is don't forget to block. Wash and block your swatch, because when you're done making this piece, the garment will be blocked. You're going to block it and you're going to wear the blocked piece. So your gauge should be blocked gauge. Okay? So that's it on the 9 tips for all of you out there that are designers. And then finally, our little finale here, and thank you guys for chiming in. I apologize about the situation with the camera, and I wasn't able to really chime in on the comments here, but you know, check out the after show on Patreon, and I'll give you the information about that in a little bit, because that's where the show notes for this are going to be there. So more details, so you can get the show notes and you can get the audio version of this session, of this video there. So that will be super cool, super cool. So here's the finale. You ready? The lady she hasn't been saying much. So this is authentic. These are my swatches from years and years of designing. Years. And that's why, well, I still have more in a little bag down here. I didn't show you guys. Look at this crazy zip. This is a Ziploc bag. And many of these swatches that you see right here were once in that bag. And of course, some of the highlights that I've been showing you. So you can see, I'm holding this up. Hopefully you can see this lovely piece. I love wearing this. It's almost like if swatches could talk. You know, I look at these and I remember the piece that I made, and I remember where I was in my life. Like this is beautiful. This is one of my favorites. This is a Schaefer yarn. I don't know if Schaefer is even around. I don't know, but Schaefer yarn, beautiful. And this is I didn't mention this. So with these swatches, if you have little pieces and they're wool, I think at least 80%, I always forget if it's 70 or 80%, you can felt, right? And then cut out, and I cut little shapes. So I've done felting of these little pieces, and then I keep them to make, you know, fiber art, you know, like this could be like an edge of like a little one-of-a-kind purse, or, you know, I can make little circles and then embroider on the top of the circles. So anyway, getting ahead of myself again. So this was a diaper bag, believe it or not, that I designed when I was pregnant. So I did design a lot of baby things, of course, while I was pregnant. Short rows, right here, you see this short rows, this pink one. This is a short rows swatch, which was actually for my mix and match class, which is Annie's online class, mix and match sampler class that I did a couple of years ago, and that was the swatch for that. And then here's another one too. This is also a swatch from the same class. That's from the short row class that I did. So anyway, just a couple, you know, just showing off a couple of these. And then here's a drop stitch. See this right here, drop stitch swatch from a piece that I showed you just a few moments ago. So what this was a pillow. It was 6 squares joined, and it had this fringe all the way around the pillow. And then what I did at the end, after I joined, what I did was I joined these all with a 3-needle bind-off. Can you see that? That's a 3-needle bind-off, because I like the idea of taking another contrasting yarn and then joining them that way. So that's what I did, and that was fun, just to take these like funky colors. And then after I had them all joined, I decided that just on one side, I felt like I wanted to then work in the round. So I had a very, very long cable, very long circular needle. And then I picked up the stitches and I just worked, random really. I just decided I would do some stockinette, do some garter, change the color, and then I ended with this purple color, which actually, it was very spontaneous, but in the end, it just ends up being a really beautiful accent. Now you guys can, steal my idea, go for it, take your gauge swatches and make yourself a really awesome infinity scarf. You can do that. You can start this weekend. So I'd love to know what you're up to when you start. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up now. So I just want to also let you guys know, I have this really awesome holiday incentive. So if you become a patron of Power Pearls Podcast for just $1, you get private audios, you get challenges, you get a members only stream. So that's a private podcast that you can't hear anywhere else. You get this video as audio only, plus the show notes and extras. So there'll be like some extra commentary from me, and we can chat together. It'd be a lot of fun if we did that after these videos. I really look forward to doing that. And you get some other goodies, beyond what I'm stating here. But these are like the highlights. Now this incentive. So for $1 a month, right? $1 a month it's only good until January. And I just wanted to make the entry really low, the barrier for entry really low, because I want everyone to enjoy this. I really do. And if you support the show, it just really helps me to continue doing these videos, creating this amazing content, creating the podcast. I have an interview later today, and then that's going to go live in a couple weeks. But actually, if you do support the show, you get those podcast episodes that end up on iTunes or wherever you download them. You'll get those ahead of time. So I'm thinking right now about a week ahead of time, and you're going to get the raw, uncut version. So from the moment the guest walks in the door, so to speak, I mean, we're doing it over Skype and just kind of online, but you get to hear from the moment we get on. So that I think is really pretty cool. Okay, so you're gonna get that. That's really awesome. So you can go to patreon.com/Power Pearls Podcast. Okay, so that's Patreon, Patreon, yes. Patreon.com/Power Pearls Podcast. And with that, I'm gonna sign off, you guys, and I will see you next week. So bye.